Johnny, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you joining me. You have a top 1% podcast where you talk about confidence and self esteem. Within that show, you've had 1,200 episodes. That is a lot of many different conversations. I know you kind of mix it up, kind of like I do on this show, some solo episodes, some guests. But you've had some guests that have had some very inspiring stories. You know, people who have overcame illnesses, people who have had major financial overturns. What are some commonalities that you notice between the people that actually get that end result and overcome that thing?
Beautiful question to dive into it. And I like to come back to like my own formula that like I'm a human being. I will slip off. I'll make mistakes. I never ever come from a perspective, and my guests won't either. That you're talking about of that they've got it all figured out, that life's all figured out, and things like that. We're all like a work on progress, and sometimes it's about catching ourselves out. But when I see generally from look at my own life when I've done well, and when I talk to a guest or I've learned from a mentor or a teacher, or I've had a great guest on, there are like some certain like patterns I see where they built like confidence in something or success in something. And typically what I find is they've got like, well, there's three things. One, they've got the right psychology, the way they think about themselves and the world, their beliefs, like the words and pictures going on inside their mind. Secondly, the right kind of energy. So they've got like this more kind of like abundance, grateful, excited kind of energy than a scarcity kind of energy. And then the third one is, as simple as it sounds, they're taking consistent action towards what they want as well. Um, but but what I've kind of like learned from myself and those people as well is that you can do all the psychology work, do the visualizations, whatever works for you, or kind of like, saying those powerful statements yourself. There's all sorts of different things. I'm always learning myself what's the best. You can do all that, but if you're not actually going to take any action, then you're not going to move forward. And there's a lot of people who like to do that. I've done sales for people, and I've seen a lot of people who are like, I'm just going to feel into it, and they're still broke because they don't do anything, right? But there's also, I've seen it when people just hustle, and that's quite reinforced, just the hustle in the world. And obviously hustling's better than doing nothing because, you're taking some kind of action. But like, I feel like if you're just doing that without having the right energy and the right psychology and what you're telling yourself and getting those beliefs, then it can like exhaust you out. So what I've seen that people have done really, really well is they've got a combination of, they're working on their minds. I say psychology rather than mindset, but it starts with mindset. They've got the right energy. They're constantly taking the right things. They're reducing the things that aren't so good for them, and then they're taking consistent action. They've got some kind of system in place. That would be kind of my perspective on that one, Aidan.
Sure. Yeah, Johnny, that was amazing what you talked about. And something that I thought about when you were talking about, thinking about your beliefs and why you believe the things that you do believe. What do you think are some ways for somebody listening to this could be like, okay, how can they grasp whether or not their beliefs are reinforcing maybe, you know, I wouldn't say a positive future, but a positive outcome that they're looking towards?
Yeah, I think like like just this might sound really simple, and again, like I'm always having to catch myself out and study, but it's like looking at your results. So I believe like there's not, in my view, there's not a shortage of like strategy in the world. Like there's not a shortage of ways to make money and all those kind of things. It's not a shortage of strategy on how to become healthy. I know we've got different bodies, different health things and things like that. There's not really a shortage of strategy of how to go out and, meet people, and whether that's dating or social circles. So like, I always think it's around like belief. Your beliefs will show you like, your results will be showing like what your beliefs are. So like for me, I believe I'm a pretty decent podcaster, and therefore my results like show it. And that's because I take the action with it. I also have a belief I'm a terrible musician, and I am. And I don't worry about like fighting that belief because, you can't do everything. Whilst my sister is an incredible singer. So I often think like kind of the results are what like determine. And that's one other thing I just want to kind of mention as well. When I look for teachers and coaches, I'm always looking for people who kind of walk the walk as much as possible. I've mentored people on podcasting because I like to think I've done pretty well and I can help someone start out. People have come to me and done that. But I also believe there's a lot of well-intentioned people out there who just want to share what they're passionate about. But I always want to look at their results. Lots of people will talk about manifesting, but actually they're really struggling in life. And that's not because they're bad people. They want to help people. But I just always like to look at someone's results because that tells me a lot about their beliefs and things like that. Someone who's making a lot of money has a belief that they can make a lot of money. Like millionaires have there's millionaires who lose and they get it back quickly because they've got such a strong belief. So yeah, I would say the results for me determine a lot about like the beliefs when I'm looking out in that respect.
Sure. I actually last week had a woman named Sabrina Guler on the show, and she's CEO. She started a couple companies, and she mentioned something that was pretty interesting about the idea that these very successful people oftentimes will, you know, pretend to be the person they want to be to eventually catch up to it. So she said, if you think about a really ambitious goal and like you say it out loud to yourself, like, okay, Johnny, I want to be bigger than Joe Rogan by next year. And then she said, if you
Mm.
can say it without laughing, or she said, if you laugh when you say it, you have some work to do, right? And obviously there's some caveats to it. I'm not like a lot of people, I was
Mm.
telling her the same thing. A lot of people think that with manifestation, it's like, okay, you say this thing and it comes in the palm of your hands. But I think it's more about the thinking side and how you start to see opportunities and those different things arise. Have you noticed that, people who might get those outsized returns have, I mean, you did talk about the different belief system, but more of a like trying to catch up and higher goals for themselves. So instead of saying to yourself, okay, I would like to have, I don't know, $1 million, you say, okay, I'm capable of doing this thing. You think that makes a big difference?
Um, Now for me, the way I kind of look at like goals is that I learned it from one of my teachers, sort of like, or a mixture of them. The way I like to look at it is having like a big vision that's like unlimited, and it's like, right, this would be my perfect day, right? And I'm not hitting my perfect day at the moment. My perfect day is like, multi millionaire on some beach somewhere with my dream wife, and making this world transformation and men's mental health. That's kind of like my picture. Now I like to have that, and that's great. But like for me to like believe that right now, that's kind of setting the direction. But that would be quite difficult, just being honest, to like believe that right now, kind of, making that. But actually, what I like to do is write out like what is my next goal, like what's the next thing I could achieve in the next 3-6 months. I try not to set it more than like 6 months, so it'd be like, okay, I want to go to like travel to California, and guess what I just did? I just come back from California, had a really great trip there, and I just made it happen, not even the way I expected, right? But by saying and focusing on the next thing, that's always like helped me. It was like, even like years ago, it'd be like, I didn't realize I was doing it. It's like, I want a full-time job like here, and I want this career. And then it was just like, I worked and did things, and then it kind of like showed up. So for me, I find it's more believable to kind of embed what is the next step rather than the massive dream. But by all means, set the massive dream so you know where you want to go in life. And that might change, right, in future as well.
Sure. I think I like the idea too, because you said you don't set anything longer than 6 months. It's kind of hard to know what's going to happen in like the
Yeah,
next year or
exactly.
two. Things change so much. And I know, yeah, even for myself, if I was to think I would be where I am today, not saying I'm like, you know, extremely successful guy, but I'm saying the position I'm in, the podcast and everything 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't believe it. But,
Absolutely.
you talked about men's mental health. I know it's a big thing that you talk about. Could you explain in, I guess, in a simple way, because it's a very big concept, why are men struggling so much? Because I feel like I see it all around me. I definitely deal with it. People around me, my friends deal with it
Mm.
as well. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. When I talk about men's mental health, what I always come from a perspective of is like just when I've worked through things myself, and maybe talking to guys, never obviously sharing someone's story or anything like that publicly, but like I share my own stuff like very publicly. I always come from a perspective of, oh, this is what I've learned, this is what I've implemented, this is what's helped, and this is why I struggle. I never want to put it to a like one size fits all, and so this will be quite a common thing that you hear in sort of like mental health about like reaching out for help. But I also have a different spin on it a little bit as well. I think reaching out for support and having community and people you can reach out to is vital, so important. I've just been in a high frequency event with like some amazing people, and the energy there was sky high, so good. And then I go hang out with the guys from my football team, and they're also amazing and all that kind of thing. But I also know there's environments that's no judgment, where there might be, people not as happy, just, kind of maybe there's a bit of like bickering about other people, that kind of thing. So I think like support and community is vital. And I think for me, if you get sometimes sharing in the wrong kind of environment or being in the wrong kind of environment can actually be more damaging than not sharing. I know that might sound a bit controversial, but I've been in positions where I've like shared like vulnerably, whether it was, and even like in the dating relationship aspect as well, and it's used against me later, or a place where I've shared with someone who actually genuinely did care about me, family or friend, but they just didn't have the capacity to hold the emotions. So I think sometimes you just got to acknowledge that, be very conscious to your own intuition of who you feel comfortable sharing with, because I think that's so important. And I think that's a challenge, not having the right environment, the right people, or not recognizing the right environments to like share with people. So I think keep it to yourself or being let down is a big cause of it. Certainly in terms of, that'd be my view if that's the number one thing. There's obviously a few things, but that'd be the main simple one.
Sure. On this podcast, I talk a lot about mindset, and one of the things that I bring up all the time, and something I truly believe, is this thought that you are with yourself 100% of the time. It's like, you have other people around you. You have uh, the world functions as a system because like people all together make it work, right? You have jobs of this person doing this who helps another person do another job. But that's one of my big beliefs about the idea you are with yourself 100% of the time. And I want to read you a quote from one of your newsletters posts that I was reading that I thought was super interesting. You said, the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. So I wanted to know, what does that mean for you?
No, I love that. That would also be the other thing if I was to say, that'd be my second thing if I was to say the reason for struggles as well is and it is the foundation actually before the other thing I mentioned there. But it is the relationship with yourself. And in particular, I'm a big fan of like inner child work as a man. Some people may be familiar, some may not. Women are very, like, a lot of women I know in the personal growth space are very into like the inner child work. I think it's so important as a man. I do it every single day. So the idea is that we've got like an inner child within inside ourselves, so like the younger version of us who might be like 3, 4, 5 years old. And that's just like having your own. I don't have any children, but that's like having your own child. And I think kids are awesome. They're the biggest teachers. They're full of energy, very exciting. But like you've got your own inner child within you. But that inner child often, we all go through different like environments and things like that. But has often been like hurt some reason or another. Some unfortunately very badly, like from environments and stuff. But even things like criticism from a young age, they can be hurt. And actually, that inner child, having a poor relationship with myself is like having a poor relationship with like the 3, 4, 5-year-old version of me, like saying, I'm useless, I'm pathetic, my emotions don't matter, forget me, I've just got to hustle and get on. That's exactly like I would be talking to like an inner child. So when I've realized that is like being a game changer, because then I start loving myself even more. It starts helping my energy. I start feeling better about myself, when I can just be in myself as well. Because if you can't sit with your own emotions, you can't sit with anyone else's either. And I think that's a problem when we try and like share with others. They're not bad people. They just haven't been able to sit with their own emotions, so they can't hold yours. And so I think that is why it's so essential for me. So I make an intention 10 minutes every day. I write a letter to my inner child. I'm like, Dear little J, I call him little J. I love you. Tell me how you're feeling today. Sometimes he's like, I'm really excited. Like I went to Disney World the other day and he's just like, and it's like, I'm a 34-year-old man, but I've got like a little child that wants to run around. But when I let him do that, it's like, I could be like me, like on my mission and like focused and then helping other guys. But yeah, sometimes he might be like, oh, I'm feeling a bit anxious today. I'm feeling a little bit nervous. I'm feeling a bit sad. I'm like, okay, that's okay. That's perfectly fine for you to feel that. Let's explore that a little bit. And that builds such a good relationship with me rather than being like, push through these emotions, hustle, hustle, hustle kind of thing that I would have used to done.
Sure, that's so interesting because I also feel like it gives you some time to be like more excited. I feel like when you said that children are our biggest teachers. I thought that was so interesting
Mm,
because think I've never thought about it, but I feel like I kind of agree. I always see children are always so happy, they're always so passionate about stuff, they always
mm.
want to do new things, and then they ask adults questions like, "Hey, can I do this?" They're always like, "Yeah, you can do whatever you want." But then I guess, like as time goes on, I guess you understand that there's some limitations to things, but at the same time, as a society, maybe this whole idea that like there's limitations. It gets the best of people and they kind of start to become cynical and against the world, if that makes sense. How long have you been doing that for, the inner child writing?
Uh, like I first came across it, I must admit, it's been consistent, I would say, in the last year or so. I first came across it in 2020 and it was like, um, when I was kind of getting a lot more into like personal growth, then I saw it was like on the workshop. Was it 2021? No, it's 2020. And I was just like curious. And then I remember the first time I did it, or the first time I saw it, I was in the workshop and this woman was talking about, she went through some horrendous, abuse and trauma. And just on the side note, like I just been at a workshop and the amount, I know I talk about men's mental health, but the amount of abuse and trauma that women go through on this planet is just like horrendous. And that often comes from hurt men just acting out. Not always, but often. And anyway, this woman at this workshop, like the guy interjected with her and he was like, went back to like her childhood. And I won't say what she went through, but basically she was like in tears and just like she's in tears of sadness, like I love you to her inner child. And then she was in this absolute bliss. And it was just like she had reconnected with herself and truly loved herself. And I thought, wow, that's powerful. And of course, I went through life and life does the things when it tests you and gives you those assignments sometimes, as I like to say. And then I went through some of my own challenges. And when I went through actually sitting in my like inner child, it's like the outer world doesn't impact it's always going to impact you to some degree, of course, but it's not like you're trying to chase things to feel good because you're telling your child you love it. So
Mm,
mm,
yeah, I really like that. I really like that. I think that is absolutely genius. You said it better than I could even explain it. Just the idea that, yeah, I totally agree as well because, you know, like mindset, a lot of things comes up when you think about mindset, but confidence is one of those things. And I feel like a lot of people are externally confident where other people can see them and think, oh, wow, that person's confident, but internally they're not. And I think confidence works in the inverse. It's more of an internal thing. And I think when you're confident in some domain of your life, you don't need to show it externally. Just the idea that you have it internally, people can recognize externally without you having to like puff your chest out, if that makes sense. This reminds me of something I wanted to ask. So thank you for sharing that, by the way. I really appreciate it. I think it's amazing how many experiences you have been exposed to in the position you were in, with podcasting, with coaching, etc. Out of all of your episodes, what is one thing that somebody has said to you that really stuck out? Something that you just constantly think about?
oh, it's a good one. It's I've had guests that I've gone and I learned from them, and it's like I signed up for their program and things like that. Yeah, there's one guy who really made a big impact on me. There's actually one. The reason my kind of mind's going to two particular guests at the moment, because one of them I'm about to do is his program because he goes into kind of deeper into the subconscious, which I'm always fascinated about and trying to learn about more myself. But there's one guy I had on who's a guy called like Peter Sage, and he was talking about this method of life called through me, and it's like a map of consciousness developed by a guy called David Hawkins, and it was basically the idea that the lowest level of consciousness, which are these kind of energies, is like shame. It's the worst thing a human being could feel. It's even like worse than death in some cases. And then the highest is like enlightenment. That's like the highest a human being. Now, very few human beings are going to get to enlightenment, right? But like there's things like up there which are like love, joy, acceptance, willingness. Courage is sort of like in the middle, in the good kind of part. But yeah, what Peter taught me was this effort, this idea that there's something called through me that a lot of us can live in. And definitely get caught into it myself, live in this like element called to me, whereby we're very like victim, and it's like this happened, oh, it always goes against me, oh, this person did that to me. And although people find that hard to let go because that means they have to take responsibility, right? When things don't go
Yeah.
right. Then there's the next level you taught me, which is really profound, which is by me. Now that is taking responsibility, but it's quite, and I definitely have to catch myself in this a lot, but it's very exhausting. It's very like, okay, that's not working. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to make sure I'm going to overcome this. That's a classic kind of achiever, and people do that. They can do well in business by like burning themselves out, but usually their health suffers or their relationship suffers and these kind of things. Or you could work so hard to get in shape, but then actually mentally you're not so good or whatever. But then he went into explaining something very profound, which is his next level, which is called through me. And this was about you're raising your frequency so that you're focusing on feeling good. You're not resisting life. You let go of the illusion of control, which is very hard to do. Even though control doesn't actually exist, it's an illusion. There's no such thing because we can't control anything apart from our own self. But what he taught me about that, which, you know, it's a practice. It's a lifetime practice, but it's about like, understanding why, you know, when something happens, you're actually being redirected to something else, and then being able to be like, oh, this is my cue to work through this emotion, feel good, and go this other direction, rather than be like, no, I'm so angry, I'm going to fight everything kind of thing. And I use it this year in my life, in that I went through quite like a harsh like dating situation, which suddenly went from like a real high to a low. And I just went in, it brought out a lot of wounds that I needed to look at. And I take responsibility. I need to look at my own wounds. I didn't, you know, I had to look at my wounds. And then actually I went, okay, I'm going to feel the emotion. I'm not going to run with it. And then I went, okay, I need some more development in this area. So then what it's led me to is to like the world's greatest like community and family, meeting someone amazing recently, going to like all these trips and adventures, living even more my purpose because I was able to see that redirection. And so that's probably the most profound thing I've ever learned. It just makes life less scarcity, less fighting, and just going more the bends in the river, as he says.
That is incredible. I captivated by that. I don't even know how you remembered all that. That is so cool. Jonny, where can people find you at?
You can find me on most of the socials. So I'm on Instagram, Jonny C. Pardoe, also TikTok, which I need to update a bit more, and on Facebook as well.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn, which is also, okay, the Instagram and the Facebook are the most regular ones updated. And then podcast related, so it's Jonny Pardoe on any of those, you'll find me. And then if you want to check out the podcast, I've got my main one, the Self-Esteem Confidence Mindset. That's a kind of general self-esteem, confidence mindset. Lots of cool guests come on, share their perspectives. I certainly don't know everything. I want to learn from these guests, and I'll share my spins on things as well. And there's also a more solo-based one I do on men's mental health as well, which is the Men's Mental Health podcast for men specifically who want to grow but also want to work through mental and emotional challenges as well.
Sure. Jonny, thank you so much for joining me. I had a great time. For my listeners, I will see you guys next Tuesday, and thank you for listening.